Hey, welcome back everybody. Okay, so this lesson is about rotations. We've done translations, we've done reflections, and now it's rotations. A rotation is a transformation that rotates a figure around a fixed point. We call that fixed point the center of rotation. If here was a shape, and here was my center of rotation, if I were to rotate this 90 degrees around that point, it would look just like this. Hopefully you can notice that the original shape was rotated 90 degrees. You can see that this line is a 90-degree angle, you can see that this line is a 90-degree angle, and we have our rotation around a fixed point of a 90-degree angle. I can also do that with a shape. Notice my triangle. I want to rotate it 180 degrees around the origin. So the fixed point is the origin. When I rotate it, here's what it looks like. And it rotates its way around. And then I get some new points. All right, so mathematically, let's see how this works. I want to graph the point and rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise around the origin. What's my point? My point is 3, 2. Notice, I'm going to rotate it counterclockwise around the origin. Notice counterclockwise will mean it goes this way. So what we're hoping you can recognize is that we need to make a 90-degree angle here as the point rotates around. Notice where it ends up. Right here at 2, -3. Do you notice a similarity between the points? There is a pattern. What is the pattern? Well, let's check it out. We started out at point 3, 2. We moved our way over to 2, -3. So just like in the previous chapters, we started at x, y, and the numbers switched, and the 2 became negative. So we like to say that the x moved to the y spot and the y moved to the x spot. So the x moved to the y spot and stayed the same. The y moved to the x spot and became its opposite. Pretty neat pattern, huh? Let's continue this on and see how it works out. So what if I wanted to rotate this 180 degrees? Notice, we start here. It rotates all the way around past the 90-degree point, all the way around to the 180-degree point. And look where we end up. Notice the pattern. Let's check it out. So what happened is we started at 3, 2, and we rotated it, and we ended up at -3, 2. If we think about that, we started at xy, and we ended up becoming -xy. You'll see how this works in a minute. What if I wanted to rotate it 270 degrees counterclockwise? Well, once again, here's our point. As it rotates around, takes a little while, sorry, passes the 180-degree mark, continues around, and we end up right here. Notice the pattern in the points. And did anyone notice that 270 degrees counterclockwise was the exact same thing as 90 degrees clockwise? If you did, nice job. Let's see the pattern. We started at 3, 2, we ended up at -2, 3. We started at xy, we ended up at y -x. When I look at it like this, I sometimes don't recognize the pattern that I should be seeing. So let's take a look. I started out at xy, which was 0.32. At 90 degrees, the y became my x and it became negative, and the x became my y but stayed the exact same number. Notice -2, 3. When I went to 180 degrees, do you notice the pattern? What was in the y coordinate spot got moved to the x coordinate spot. What was in the x coordinate spot got moved to the y coordinate spot. And you notice how when it gets moved to the x coordinate spot, it becomes negative. I went from y to -y, I went from x to -x. I went from x to x, I went from -y to -y. Does that pattern hold true? You bet it does. Notice, The number in the x-coordinate spot gets moved to the y-coordinate spot, and it stays the same. The y-coordinate spot gets moved to the x-coordinate spot, and it becomes the opposite. And if we want to complete this full circle, a full 360, notice the y gets moved, and the x becomes the opposite. Any questions on that? If you were to stare at one page of this lesson today, this would be it. If you understand this pattern, this chapter is super simple. If you don't understand this pattern, well, it just gets a little bit trickier and you have to visualize. Let's check it out. So, what if I took this triangle and wanted to rotate it 180 degrees around the origin? Well, if I knew the pattern instantaneously, I'd be done. But let's see what the visualization would look like. As we rotate it 180 degrees, do you notice it ends up in quadrant 3? Do you notice where you end up with your points? I'm here at -2, -1. Notice that is the opposite of these two which fit our pattern. You guessed it, we should be at -2, -3, and what do you know? We are -2, -3 for that point. And for this point, we should end up at -5, -1, and what do you know? -5, -1. We got all our points, and we rotated 180 degrees. All right, what if I had this one? I want to rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise around the origin. So, what quadrant are we going to end up in? Notice this way is clockwise, and this way is counterclockwise. Our triangle is going to end up in quadrant 2, and that could be a clue on what the points should be. If we rotate it, this point should be 90 degrees away from this one, and look where it ends up, at -4, 3. Notice the y-coordinate gets moved to the x spot and becomes negative, and the 3 gets moved to the y spot, and it stays the same. Follow that pattern, and you'll get the rest of the points. Pretty neat, huh? All right, one more. Here's where we could trick you a little bit. What if I just gave you a point, -4, 1, and I said, hey guys, rotate it 90 degrees clockwise around the origin? Well, we're so used to going counterclockwise, we might forget that we need to be going clockwise. Notice which quadrant it puts us in. Notice what quadrant it puts us in. Because again, that will be helpful in knowing what the coordinates of the point are. 1, 4. As we showed you before, you can also rotate around a fixed point of the shape. What would that look like here? Well, if I had the shape and I want to rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise around this point, then all I would do is rotate it 90 degrees. Notice what it looks like. All right. Are there any questions? If you have any questions, please feel free to give me a call, send me an email, and I'll see you guys all in class. Take care.